Today is Saturday, February the 23rd, 2019. I always do this date thing. I guess somewhere, some way, somebody's going to listen to this and go, hey, what the hell is he talking about? This isn't this date. But in a way that sort of times everything, and so you can go back and listen to it and go, oh, I remember that piece of time in history. Oh yeah, no problem, right? So anyway, I would like to talk a little bit about a tragedy. I know I like to promote the positive and all that fun stuff, but I opened up my Twitter last night and seen that comedian Brody had passed away. He's not one of those like super well-known comics, as far as you probably didn't see a special on TV. You probably haven't really noticed him that often, but he works with a lot of comedians. He does warm-ups for TV shows. He would kind of get everybody in the crowd-pleasing yay mood before other people would come on stage to do their television stuff. And I've heard him on many podcasts. I've heard him on Pete Holmes' You Made It Weird, and I've heard him on Bert Kreischer's The Bertcast. Very nice guy, very positive sounding. He had a very affirmation type voice, a very positive, excited, like zest for life kind of voice, which is heartbreaking when you hear, that he had some sort of problem and committed suicide. And I'm looking on Twitter feeds and seeing comic after comment on the fact that they felt like they were extremely close to Brody, and that he was always such a shining light of energy and life and excitement and friendliness, and then this happens, and it's devastating for a lot of people. And I've talked about depression on this podcast as well, and that came kind of around the time that I listened to LeeAnn Kreischer's podcast on depression that she did with what's his name? I'm drawing a blank right now. I can look it up. How about that? Because I got my phone in my hands. You guys don't have that luxury. But it's episode 49 of Wife of the Party, Mental Illness Happy Hour with Paul Gilmartin. He has his own podcast as well, and I guess she was a guest on that show, and then adversely she had him on her show. But on there, in that discussion about depression, it got me inspired to talk about my depression and about how I was going through that at the time, and that it was just a funk of the holidays. And we all kind of go through that kind of stuff from time to time, and it's important to reach out and important to talk about it with the people that are close to you so that they can kind of help you get through it. We are a community. Whether we talk about it or realize it, we are all part of a community, and we all kind of lean on each other for help at times. Kind of to get a little bit personal here, but I had a discussion with somebody that I serve with at church this past Sunday. A good friend of ours who I met whenever I started this church, or started going to this church, New Spring here in Florence. I volunteered to help out with the coffee. We serve coffee at our church. When you come in, it's an opportunity as like an opening hand or a handshake or a greeting tool. You invite people to come over and have some coffee, and in the meanwhile you can talk to them and kind of create a sense of community and talk to them about, hey, I noticed you're coming, and have you been here often? Would you like to see more? Would you like to talk to somebody about coming more? We'd like to have you here. And this woman's name is LeeAnn. I'm not going to give you her last name because that doesn't matter, but people don't know. But anyway, LeeAnn and I talk often about the fact that we like serving, and we like helping people, and we like when things go smoothly and that kind of stuff. And at times it is an overwhelming job because she has kind of taken on sort of a leadership role and kind of fills in the gaps for whenever other people don't come in. And it's an unpaid position. It's strictly volunteer, as many of us are there just to volunteer and to serve and to help others. It at times can become overwhelming, and I was talking to her about the fact that she felt overwhelmed. And here's an example of how our community could come together and help each other. And I said, listen, why don't you take some time off and not serve for a while and just let me handle this? I'll take care of it. I'll make sure everything is done, and you can just relax. And whenever you feel like you're ready to come back, you can come back, and we can alternate. Like, we'll alternate time, we'll alternate responsibilities. And it doesn't have to be just the two of us. Like, there's other people that we could kind of nurture and say, hey, listen, why don't you take this weekend and be the one that kind of makes sure everything goes smooth. Because you do have people that are a little more active and a little more responsible and a little more present on a regular basis. So I think that that'll help out with her and with me, and you know, it's something that I can do. It's something that it's some small way that I can help out, and I think in the long run it'll make a huge difference to her and to our team. At times we all tend to be somewhat of micromanagers in our life, especially if you're the kind of person that gets up in the morning and thinks, all right, let's attack this day. And she's that kind of person. She's, you know, she goes to the gym with my wife, and my wife talks about the first time she ever met her, she was intimidated by her because Brianne was just, you know, going after it and tough, and it was hard not to be inspired by her, to see her efforts and go, wow, I want to be able to measure up to that. I want to be able to be in the same room with you and earn your respect. And, you know, in life, I tend to gravitate toward those people, and I tend to emulate those people. Maybe that's why my wife and I are together, is because we're both those kinds of people. We like to set the bar high and keep pushing ourselves to be better. I know a lot of people seem to get by with just sitting around and doing nothing, and I don't know how to relate to those people at all. And I feel bad about this comedian, Brody Stevens, who, you know, I listen to a lot of comedians' podcasts. I listen to Joe Rogan's, I listen to Pete Holmes's and Bert Kreischer's and Mark Maron's, and, you know, Your Mom's House with Christina Pazynski and Tom Segura. And, you know, they all talk about having a rough childhood and things that happened to them that were traumatic, and because of that they then found the humor in things and were able to sort of relate to people in a different way that nurtured their comedy. You know, Bill Burr has his Monday morning podcast, and he gets on there and he has sort of a cornerstone of what I like to call rant humor, where he just goes on a rant about things that he thinks are silly or aggravating or whatever. And he's hilarious when he gets ramped up like that. I mean, it's a different kind of humor than a lot of people are doing, but it's, you know, it's funny. But you can hear in his voice that it comes from a place of pain and aggravation and frustration, and, you know, we all deal with it, but you just have to learn how to figure out how to navigate that along the way. And there's people out there, these, you know, I guess you'd call them pioneers, these comedians who take a microphone, get up on stage, and somehow broadcast to the audience a feeling of, I understand, and I'm going through this with you, and here's the aspect of it that you may not have thought of and may not want to think of, but I'm going to try and make you laugh about it, because the levity of it is what's needed. Some of my favorite podcasts to listen to are when comedians have other comedians on. Joe Rogan this past week, on Tuesday, did a podcast, episode 1249 of the Joe Rogan Experience, Donnell Rawlings. Now, I just got done watching Donnell Rawlings on YouTube on Bert Kreischer's cooking show, Something's Burning. And Donnell kind of took over the show. I mean, to the point that, I mean, I was laughing with tears in my eyes watching them cook together. It was so fun to watch, and Donnell was just on fire. I mean, he was just a natural to kind of take over the show and show some little tips, and he had Bert laughing his butt off, and I was laughing watching it. And then he pops up on Joe Rogan's podcast, and they do a good 2.5 hours. Again, if you ever listen to these podcasts, Joe starts his off with a bunch of ads. Just click the fast forward button and get through them, and then he starts off. You can hear the music, and then they're off to the races. But, you know, check out that podcast. It's really good. There's a lot of information on there. They talk a lot about the fact that, I guess during the conversation, everything flows so fluidly, And Donnell talks about being on the Chappelle Show and being on In Living Color, and he talks about how they navigated the fandom of the Chappelle Show and kind of moved forward with their careers. And they'll pop up in places where people will recognize them through fame, but they don't realize that Donnell's been a stand-up comedian for over 25 years. You know, he's got a toolbox of jokes that he can throw at you at any time, and you're like, did you just come up with that? He's like, yeah, 15 years ago. I mean, I never told it, but here it is. And it's sort of like that, and it's a fun listen. And in there they talk about the fact that they start a podcast for Donnell called Too Short. So I'm going to look it up. I'm going to check it out. I recommend everybody else check it out too. It's probably going to be really good. I'm just saying. If you listen to this conversation with Joe and Donnell, you're going to be like, oh yeah, I want to hear more of this kind of stuff. This is going to be cool. And of course, he's friends with other comedians, and they're going to have them on, and it's sort of a community. And when they have that, it's sort of like you're listening to a bunch of friends in the same room, and you're like, I can't wait to sit and listen to them, because then I get to hang out with my buddies, even though you're not buddies. LeeAnn talks about that too on her podcast, Wife of the Party. I'm listening to a podcast that she's done on, this past week, on the 21st, episode 56, Drinking with Friends. And she says that she gets people coming up to her now and commenting on, you know, every time I listen to you guys, I feel like I'm listening to my friends hang out, even though I've never met you guys. And I've sort of felt like that over the years, listening to different people's podcasts. Whenever I would check out somebody's and they would say, they'd have a guest in and they would say, hey, by the way, come, you know, if you get time, come and check out mine. And that's how I first found out who Joe Coy was. Joe Coy, I guess they had some kind of group podcast together with Bert, and then he invited Bert to be on his podcast, and then I went and checked out Joe Coy's podcast, and it was great. And then Joe's done Bert's podcast, and then this past year Joe came out with a Netflix special, which is hilarious. And in a way, your fandom grows, and you look forward to these things. You look forward to the excitement of seeing the people that you follow and the people that you have supported do well. You know, Bert got in a conversation once with Doug Stanhope about fandom and people who say they're fans, and Doug at the time was kind of against the term fan. He was like, I don't get this fan term. I mean, what is that really? And you know, part of it was both of them not really understanding the level of fame that they had, or the fact that they were worthy of fans. They felt like they were nervous about the fact that they were somewhat of a celebrity, and to say that they had fans, they both felt guilty. And later, Bert talks about the fact that he realized along the way in a meet and greet, he got to meet with one of his fans, and the guy told him, said, listen, I'm a fan. And he said, yeah. He goes, no, I don't think you understand what I'm saying. I'm a fan. When you do well, I feel like I do well, and I want you to succeed. And he's like, oh, I guess that does make sense. And then he goes, well, of course I'm a fan of things. I'm a fan of Joe's. I'm a fan of Doug Stanhope. I'm a fan of all these guys. Attell, you know, I want them to succeed because it makes me also feel like I succeed. Even though I'm out here as a creator as well, I am a fan. So it sort of reset the bar for fans. And, you know, I can't help but wonder, was some of this going on with Brody Stevens? Did he feel like he was in some level of disconnect? He had just posted the day before on Twitter that he was looking forward to the comedy festival season coming up this year. I mean, you know, what was going on? And it also makes you wonder, why didn't he reach out to somebody and talk to somebody and say, hey, I'm having a rough time. I don't know what's going on. I just can't seem to find my happy place or whatever. And you know, don't think that admitting you have a problem, it makes you weak. It doesn't. Okay, we all go through stuff. You just have to be able to have the understanding that we're all here for each other. We're all here to help each other. So if you're in that kind of situation, please don't hesitate to reach out to people around you. whether it's family, friends, a counselor, priest, or if you just want to call somebody on the phone and have them answer. There's 1-800 numbers. I'm looking right now on Twitter, and in the USA, there is 1-800-273-8255. If you're in the UK or Ireland, it's 116-123. If you're in Canada, it's 1-833-456-4566. If you're in Australia, 131114. And if you're in New Zealand, 0800-543-345. Reach out to somebody. Talk to somebody. It's not too late until it's too late. And listen, I get the fact that we all have one shot at this, and you know, it's rough. It's a hard life. I've had a hard week. I mean, this past week has been extremely physical and taxing, and you sort of at times go, okay, where's the reward? Where is the thing where you go, okay, it was worth it? And sometimes you don't get that answer. Sometimes you don't get the answer you want. Sometimes you just have to trudge through whatever it is you're going through to get further down the line. I talked to my wife about the fact that, you know, when I started this YouTube and podcast stuff, it was just because I felt like I needed to. I couldn't explain it, I couldn't understand it, but I felt like I had to do it. Especially with the podcast. I mean, I hit the ground running with the podcast like I had my butt on fire, and I couldn't seem to figure it out quick enough. It was sort of like a Rubik's Cube. Anybody familiar with a Rubik's Cube? Little square cube thing that you have colors on all different sides, and you try and twist it around so that all the colors match up. Okay, so this was kind of like that. When I started this podcast, it was like a puzzle I wanted to figure out, and I felt like I just couldn't solve the puzzle fast enough. I wanted to figure out what equipment to use, what programs to use, how to broadcast, how to get it to where people could listen to it. And I was curious to see if people would listen to it. And, you know, now I'm getting stuff on my phone where I can look at, you know, reports, or on the computer where I can look at numbers, and people are actually listening. You guys are actually listening, and I appreciate it. You know, if we're to build a community and if we're to help one another, this is the kind of stuff that helps. You know, I would like to have LeeAnn on here and talk to her about some of the things that's going on with her. I don't know if she'll do that. She's kind of a private person. But anyway, I just want to kind of bring to light the fact that everybody goes through something, and we need to lean on each other, and we need to help one another so that we can get through these kinds of things. So, anywho, that's all I'm going to say about that. Rest in peace, Brody Stevens. I thought you were a hilarious guy, and I hate that you were going through that. So, I would like to change gears a little bit and talk about Netflix. There's been an outrage recently of the cancellation of The Punisher and Daredevil, and I talked a lot about that last week, so I'm not going to go into that much more. But I would like to talk about the fact that they have a new series on, The Umbrella Academy, and I got to watch all of it finally. And it's 10 episodes. They're close to an hour long apiece, and it is really fantastic. I'll give you a quick rundown of the show. This is not spoiling anything. This is just what I learned from watching the preview. So in the preview, whenever you know, when it says view more information, and they show you like the little preview thing. So here's the premise. Okay, on a certain date, I don't remember what date they said, but on a certain date, 43 children were born at exactly the same time. And what makes it extremely unusual was the day started off where the mothers of those children were not pregnant at all. And they show a scene where this woman is at a pool, a young girl is at a pool, and she jumps in the water, and she's not pregnant when she jumps in the water, but she starts giving birth like right away. And she gives birth to a baby, and then this guy appears out of nowhere, this wealthy guy, and he offers her money for the baby. and he adopts as many as he can. He ends up adopting 7 of these kids. And he creates this thing called the Umbrella Academy, where he raises these young kids as his own. And it's not the heartwarming, huggy, lovey, out of the kindness of my heart kind of situations. He realizes, I guess, that they have some sort of superpower, and he wants to nurture them to be crime fighters, or to fight for people who are in need. And they have some pretty unusual superpowers. It's worth a watch. It's very interesting. You know, in the previews you learn that the old man does pass away, and they have to come together, and they, you know, kind of have fallen apart over the years and grown apart, but now they have to come together to mourn the loss of this guy they called father. And it's really cool. It's well written, it's well acted, the sci-fi in it is cool. Even the camera effects are cool. There's a lot of scenes where the camera will suddenly be above them or below them, or you know, through someone's eyesight kind of thing, and the way they shot it is really cool. So I think if you watch it, you know, even if you're not really sure about it, watch an episode or two and you're gonna be like, oh, okay, I get this. And keep an eye on everybody. Like, people that you don't think are that interesting to start with become very interesting later. That's all I'll say. So check out the Umbrella Academy. You're gonna dig it. I dug it. I hope they make more of them, because the story is developed to where they can create more. And if you start watching it and you get several episodes in and you're going, yeah, I don't see how they can create more, trust me, there is a way. There is a interesting way. So, yeah. Today is Saturday, and today we are having some friends over, and I am smoking a pork butt on the back porch using my Gorilla Grill Silverback Grill pellet smoker. I got up at 4 o'clock this morning because something's wrong with my brain and I can't sleep, even though I'm exhausted and I want to sleep. So I got up, and it was too dark to do anything other than prep the meat. I actually prepped the meat last night, so that's not even a thing. But I knew I needed to clean the grill before we got started. The problem with a pellet grill is after a while you need to take it apart and clean the ash pot on the inside, because if you don't, it has a tendency to eventually flame up around the ash pot. So anytime I do like a really long cook, I try to clean it afterwards, or before I'm getting ready to do a long cook, I try to clean it before. But I wish I knew how many hours in between cleanings. I want to say probably about 20 hours in between cleanings is about what I average. That way you make sure to get all of the excess grease off of the top cooking surface and all of the ash around the ash pot cleaned up. And it's really easy. I mean, you take the grill top off and move the drip pan, and there's like a protective heat shield. You slide it out and then just use a shop vac and clean out the insides, and it comes out really easily. So I did that this morning, even before the sun come up. The sun was cresting over the horizon, just bright enough so I could see. And I got out there and cleaned it really early this morning so that I could get it ready and warmed up and put the meat on as soon as I could. And it's gonna slow smoke and be just yummy as all get out. Is that even a term? Yummy as all get out? I don't know. So anyway, busy week. My mom called me this week, and she was having some kidney trouble, and actually ended up in the hospital and had a little bit of an infection, but she's gotten better and she's back home and getting back in the swing of things. And you know, it's just one of those things. But I'm gonna cut this short because I don't know. I need to watch more. I need to listen to more. I'm listening to this LeeAnn podcast right now with her drinking with friends, and it's interesting. It's kind of fun to hear them kick back and relax, because they do a lot of podcasts together, and this one's a lot of fun. Some of my favorite Bert podcasts are the ones where he's drinking with friends. He did one time with John Heffron where they did like 4.5 hours, and by the end of it you can tell that they're hammered. It was actually fun to listen to. There's another double special on there where he talked to Doug Stanhope. They did like, I want to say they did like 3 hours, and then Bert was like, yeah, we got to have dinner with the family, and Doug's like, well, I can hang around. He's like, really? He's like, yeah. So he had dinner with Bert's family and taught the kids how to do spit takes, and then afterwards they came back out and recorded another 2.5 hours of the podcast, and it was fun. That was one of my favorite double podcasts to listen to. One of my favorite podcasts to listen to, because Doug is just, Doug is extremely interesting. But yeah, so again, if you're struggling with depression, or if you're feeling like you have suicidal thoughts, reach out to somebody. There are plenty of hotlines, and there are plenty of people that will talk to you, and there are plenty of people that will reach out. And sometimes you just need a hug. Just say it. Say, hey, I could use a hug. So here's me giving you a verbal mental hug. I hope everybody's doing well, and stick around. This will be, I know this is kind of a downer podcast, but there'll be better ones. We'll have a lot going on here soon. That's it. Y'all take care, and see you next time. Bye.